Okay. Vel, jeg har ikke satt tiden korrekt I dag, da. Dere får unnskylde også, det spillet mitt liksom I et vindu nå. Fordi at jeg måtte musepekeren min her I sted, så jeg måtte bare prøve å få den tilbake igjen. Men jeg var ikke klar over at dette her var en sånn ting som kom til å komme opp. Tell you what, I'll make you a deal. Since you've been so cooperative, the next time you boot up the game and see the screen, just set the clock to your favorite time. Go ahead, pick whichever time you want. If it's not the correct time, you've earned it. Ok. Fantastisk spill, helt klart. Hallo nok en gang, og velkommen nok en gang til The Stanley Parable. Ja, som dere så I introen da, vi hadde litt kuriøst møte med klokken. Jeg var ikke klar over at det der var en ting I det hele tatt, så jeg ble litt sånn forundret. Men anyway, en kul liten detalj. Så vi tilbake her I kontorlandskapet, og vi skal gjøre mye det samme som vi gjorde sist gang, bare vi skal velge noen andre ting.
What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Yes, det var det samme som sist gang det. Igjen, masse cubicles. Vi skal denne gangen gjøre litt det vi får beskjed om, og litt ikke det vi får beskjed om.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Og her skal vi gå til venstre, faktisk. Fordi at vi har noen flere ting vi kan utforske etter hvert.
Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office, hoping he might find an answer there.
Yes. Vi får ta oss gå videre.
Stanley stepped into the broom closet, but there was nothing here, so he turned around and got back on track.
Du sikker på det? Du sikker på at jeg gjorde det?
There was nothing here. No choice to make, no path to follow, just an empty broom closet. No reason to still be here.
Det helt korrekt. Det ingen grunn til at jeg her inne. Så... Men det også heller ingen grunn til at jeg ikke kan gå inn igjen.
It was baffling that Stanley was still just sitting in the broom closet. He wasn't even doing anything. At least if there was something to interact with, he'd be justified in some way. As it is, he's literally just standing there doing sweet FA.
Ja, det akkurat det vi gjør. Sweet fuck all.
Are you really still in the broom closet? Standing around doing nothing? Why? Please offer me some explanation here. I'm genuinely confused.
Fin liten Easter egg.
Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Ok, la meg få prøve en ting her. Because the boss knows that what the boss says goes, if the boss suffered losses, then that's what the boss chose. Okay? Extreme bathrooms! Gud. Ja, det også noe å skrive et blad om, tenker jeg. Men ja, fint bad om ikke litt sånn, ja, ikke helt min stil av tapet, men whatever liksom.
Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Shocked, unraveled, Stanley wondered in disbelief who orchestrated this, what dark secret was being held from him. What he could not have known was that the keypad behind the boss's desk guarded the terrible truth that his boss had been keeping from him, and so the boss had assigned it an extra secret PIN number. 2 2845. But of course, Stanley couldn't possibly have known this.
Det er helt korrekt. Jeg har ikke peiling på hva det er. Så vi har ikke tenkt å pjøte noe kode inn i denne greien i dag.
Stanley just sat around twiddling his thumbs. Trying to input anything on the device was useless, since he could never possibly know that the combination was 2845.
Ja, det... 2, 8... 5, 5.
2845.
Jeg lurer på om det går an å så drive han der fortellerstemmen til vanvidd. Hvis jeg bare venter med å pjøte inn det siste nummeret da. Kommer det til å irritere han? Eller hvis det pjøter i feil da.
It turns out that the panel's emergency override kicked in, and the door just opened all by itself, and Stanley got the hell along with the story. Well, whoop-de-doo.
Det er fantastisk. Whoop-de-doo. Jeg elsker dette her. Det var mye mørkere enn jeg husket dette her greiene. Der er heisen. Hva er det som er her borte? Er det noe her borte? Det er jo svart som natten her. For å si det sånn. Jeg går baklengs inn her for... Jeg kan ikke se noen ting. Jeg får bare gå i heisen, helt enkelt. Og så skal vi prøve oss på en annen rute der nede.
Descending deeper into the building, Stanley realized he felt a bit peculiar. It was a stirring of emotion in his chest, as though he felt more free to think for himself, to question the nature of his job. Why did he feel this now,
Filosofiske
when for
spørsmål.
years it had never occurred to him? This question would not go unanswered for long.
Ok, og som vi så i...
Stanley walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility.
Som vi så i forrige episode, så har vi også en rute her. Som jeg går inn i nå.
Although this passageway had the word escape written on it, the truth was that at the end of this hall, Stanley would meet his violent death.
I see. I see.
The door behind him was not shut. Stanley still had every opportunity to turn around and get back on track.
Nei. Vi skal ned denne gangen her. Og se hva som skjuler seg her.
At this point, Stanley was making a conscious, concerted effort to walk forward and willingly confront his death.
Vi får se hva som er her, helt enkelt. Hallo? Oi. Ok, hvor er vi nå, mon tro?
As the machine whirred into motion and Stanley was inched closer and closer to his demise, he reflected that his life had been of no consequence whatsoever. Stanley can't see the bigger picture. He doesn't know the real story, trapped forever in his narrow vision of what this world is. Perhaps his death was of no great loss, like plucking the eyeballs from a blind man. And so he resigned and willingly accepted this violent end to his brief and shallow life. Farewell, Stanley.
Jeg vet ikke om det er mulig å overleve den maskinen, men...
Farewell, Stanley, cried the narrator, as Stanley was led helplessly into the enormous metal jaws. In a single visceral instant, Stanley was obliterated, as the machine crushed every bone in his body, killing him instantly.
Oi! Ok, ja, vi slapp unna den. The Stanley Parable.
And yet it would be just a few minutes before Stanley would restart the game, back in his office, as alive as ever. What exactly did the narrator think he was going to accomplish?
Jeg kan ikke helt huske dette greiene
When every
her.
path you can walk has been created for you long in advance, death becomes meaningless, making life the same. Do you see now? Do you see that Stanley was already dead from the moment he hit start?
The Office. Ok, så det er bare masse assets da. Button sounds. A selection of the sounds used throughout the game when buttons are pressed. Each sound is a mix of a keyboard stroke and a synthesized tone. Og så det sikkert vår cubicle da. 427. The two doors. This set of two open doors was the very first concrete piece of the Stanley Parable's design. Once this room was created, the rest of the game emerged as an extension of it. An exploration of the contradiction this room posed. Ja, for det jo en contradiction. Altså det jo, vi skal jo også vi får beskjed om, men det jo ingen del av oss som har på en måte lyst til å gjøre det vi får beskjed om. Vi har jo lyst til å utforske. Nature paintings, sikkert sånn som henger i kontorene. Stanley's computer. Corridor. The pacing of this opening section was important to get it right. The corridor has been moved and altered to make sure the player reaches the two doors in good time. Okay. Jeg ikke helt sikker på om dette her for Ultra Deluxe-utgaven, eller om dette alltid var i spillet. Jeg lurer meg ikke på om det alltid var i spillet. Men jeg ærlig talt ikke 100% sikker. Ja, her har vi creditsene og alt sånn. Kevin Brighting. Det narratoren. Maintenance room, ja. The Office. Jo, jeg husker faktisk dette her. I hvert fall noe veldig lignende. Warzone. Early in development, we designed an ending where Stanley would end up on a battlefield fighting aliens. The action game would become sentient and would wage war against the narrator. We realized shortly after starting to build it that it was far too jokey and on the nose for the tone of the game. Plus, some people interpreted it as making fun of people who like shooters, which was not our intention. Kunne vært interessant å se hva som kommer der, men narrator emails. After the second trailer we sent out, we asked people to email the narrator for questions. While we had initially planned to use these further promotional materials, we never found the perfect use for them. Here are a selection of those emails. Okay. Ja. Folk var begeistret over spillet den gang. Så dette her jo det min... Plutselig ble det veldig loud. Hvorfor har vi 3 rom her med 427 da? From left to right, the evolution of Stanley's office over time. The first was created in November 2011, the second in March 2012, and the third in February 2013. Ja. Ja, men dette minner meg om liksom, den siste episoden jeg gjorde av Infliction, og vi gikk rundt i det der galleriet. Game Design Markup. Ja. Så dette her jo liksom alle... Ja, jeg vet ikke, kanskje det potensielle spoilere inni her. Så jeg kommer bare til å restarte spillet, og så kan vi ta oss og utforske noe annet. Og så, ja, i stedet for å spoile dette her. Ja, da vi tilbake igjen her på kontoret.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean?
What could it mean?
Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Kan vi utforske noe av dette her, kanskje? Går disse dørene an å åpne? Jeg har liksom ikke tenkt på det før nå. Å åpne disse dørene her. Vi kan prøve og se om det...
No matter how hard Stanley looked, he couldn't find a trace of his co-workers.
Ja. Det faller min oss på, liksom, at vi må komme oss back on track, liksom. Vi bare prøver disse dørene. Jeg kan ikke tenke meg at noen av de egentlig åpner seg. Eller i hvert fall i forhold til det vi ser her nå, så ser det ikke ut som noen kommer til å åpne seg. Men det er jo verdt et forsøk.
Stanley went around touching every little thing in the office, but it didn't make a single difference. Nor did it advance the story in any way.
Ok. Melding mottatt. Vi går videre. Jeg må prøve den også. Vi går videre og se hva vi kan gjøre. Nå når jeg tenker meg om, kan vi...
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Det er en ting jeg har lyst til å prøve da, som jeg ikke fikk prøvd i sted.
Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office. Hoping he might coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Så det vi kommer til å gjøre nå er å ikke gå opp, vi kommer til å gå ned. Og se hva som er her nede. Her var det rødt. Meget rødt. Hva er det der for noe? Ingenting.
But Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss. Admitting he had left his post during work hours, he might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished? His boss would think he was crazy. And then something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. All of my co-workers blinking mysteriously out of existence in a single moment for no reason at all? None of it made any logical sense.
Det er et godt poeng.
And as Stanley pondered this, he began to make other strange observations. For example, why couldn't he see his feet when he looked down? Why did doors close automatically behind him wherever he went? And for that matter, these rooms were starting to look pretty familiar. Were they simply repeating? No, Stanley said to himself, this is all too strange. This can't be real. And at last, he came to the conclusion that had been on the tip of his tongue. He just hadn't found the words for it. I'm dreaming, he yelled. This is all a dream. Oh, what a relief Stanley felt to have finally found an answer, an explanation. His co-workers weren't actually gone. He wasn't going to lose his job. He wasn't crazy after all. And he thought to himself, I suppose I'll wake up soon. I'll have to go back to my boring real-life job pushing buttons. I may as well enjoy this while I'm still lucid. So, he imagined himself flying and began to gently float above the ground. Then he imagined himself soaring through space on a magical starfield, and it too appeared. It was so much fun. And Stanley marveled that he had still not woken up. How was he remaining so lucid? And then perhaps the strangest question of them all entered Stanley's head. One he was amazed he hadn't asked himself sooner. Why is there a voice in my head dictating everything that I'm doing and thinking? Now the voice was describing itself being considered by Stanley, who found it particularly strange. I'm dreaming about a voice describing me, thinking about how it's describing my thoughts, he thought. And while he thought it all very odd and wondered if this voice spoke to all people in their dreams, the truth was that, of course, this was not a dream. How could it be? Was Stanley simply deceiving himself, believing that if he's asleep, he doesn't have to take responsibility for himself? Stanley is as awake right now as he's ever been in his life. Now, hearing the voice speak these words was quite a shock to Stanley. After all, he knew for certain, beyond a doubt, that this was in fact a dream. Did the voice not see him float and make the magical stars just a moment ago? How else would the voice explain all that? This voice was a part of himself too. Surely, if he could just... He would prove it. He would prove that he was in control, that this was a dream. So he closed his eyes gently, and he invited himself to wake up. He felt the cool weight of the blanket on his skin, the press of the mattress on his back, the fresh air of a world outside this one. Let me wake up, he thought to himself. I'm through with this dream. I wish it to be over. Let me go back to my job. Let me continue pushing the buttons. Please, it's all I want. I want my apartment, and my wife, and my job. All I want is my life exactly the way it's always been. My life is normal. I am normal. Everything will be fine. I am okay. Stanley began screaming. Please, someone, wake me up. My name is Stanley. I have a boss. I have an office. I am real. Please, just someone tell me I am real. I must be real. I must be. Can anyone hear my voice? Who am I? Who am I? And everything went black. This is the story of a woman named Mariella. Mariella woke up on a day like any other. She arose, got dressed, gathered her belongings, and walked to her place of work. But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk. And although she would soon turn to go call for an ambulance, for just a few brief moments she considered the strange man. He was obviously crazy. This much she knew. Everyone knows what crazy people look like. And in that moment, she thought to herself how lucky she was to be normal. I am sane. I am in control of my mind. I know what is real and what isn't. It was comforting to think this, and in a certain way, seeing this man made her feel better. But then she remembered the meeting she had scheduled for that day, the very important people whose impressions of her would affect her career, and by extension, the rest of her life. She had no time for this, so it was only a moment that she stood there, staring down at the body. And then she turned and ran.
Og det var 2 ulike scenarier som vi kan se i dette spillet her. Nå må jeg begynne å tenke litt hvordan vi skal gjøre det neste scenarioet, så vi kan komme oss opp i. Men det får bli neste gang, tenker jeg. Det får holde for i dag. Så håper dere har likt dagens episode, og at dere vil se mer og alt sånn. Så får vi se snart igjen. Adios.
You know, must see. Really nice.